My name is Carter James, and I've always believed in the power of a friendly wave and a helping hand. I try to live by the golden rule, treating everyone with respect and kindness. I'm a software developer working remotely and enjoy the quiet solitude of my home. I've always found my peace in routine, a strong cup of coffee in the morning, a brisk walk around the block, and then diving into the complex world of coding. My neighborhood, usually a haven of tranquility, had been slowly changing, and not for the better. Specifically, it was one resident who was making the transition from peaceful to stressful. Karen. I'd had minor run-ins with her before, complaints about my lawn being a quarter-inch too long, according to her, a disapproving glare aimed at my car for supposedly blocking her view of, well, nothing really. Mostly petty, insignificant things that I brushed off as eccentricities. I truly believed, and still do, that the best way to combat negativity is with positivity, but it was getting harder and harder to ignore her antics. I'd always made an effort to smile and nod, hoping my genuine friendliness would eventually win her over, or at least neutralize her disposition. Today, however, my naive optimism was about to be put through its most rigorous test yet. The day started normally. I was just settling into my work, enjoying the quiet hum of my computer and the satisfying click of the keyboard, when I heard a loud banging on my front door. Annoyed, but still attempting to maintain my composure, I walked to the door and opened it. There she was, Karen, her face contorted in a way I'd only previously seen in cartoon villains. Before I could even utter a greeting, she launched into a tirade. My internet is down, and it's your fault. You need to pay for my Wi-Fi right now. I blinked, utterly stunned. Had I misheard her? Was this some kind of bizarre joke? I'm a calm and patient guy, but there were limits to how much absurdity I could take. Excuse me, I managed to stammer out, completely bewildered. She repeated herself, her voice escalating with each word. You heard me. I have no Wi-Fi, and I know you have it. It's only fair that you pay for it. I need to watch my shows. The entitlement radiating from her was almost tangible, a thick, acrid cloud hanging in the air between us. At first, I thought it was a prank, but the look in her eyes, the sheer unadulterated conviction in her voice, told me she was dead serious. I couldn't believe that she seriously thought I owe her Wi-Fi. I was flabbergasted. I tried to remain calm, explaining to her as rationally as possible that I had no responsibility for her internet service. I explained that I pay for my own service, just like everyone else, and that what she was asking was completely unreasonable. But reason seemed to have no effect on her. My attempt at a rational explanation clearly fell on deaf ears. Karen's face turned an even deeper shade of red, and her voice reached a screech that threatened to shatter my windows. Don't you try to weasel out of this. I know you're loaded with your fancy computer job. You can afford it. I deserve to have my internet, and you're going to pay for it. She punctuated each sentence with a jab of her finger, her eyes gleaming with irrational anger. I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated by her theatrical outburst. Karen, I'm not paying for your Wi-Fi. It's your responsibility to handle your own expenses. I work hard for my money, and I'm not going to give it away to you for something that is entirely your own concern. I hoped my firm tone would finally get through to her, but I was clearly underestimating the depth of her entitlement. Her response was immediate and chilling. Fine. If you're not going to pay for my internet, I'm calling the police. I'll tell them you're harassing me, that you're threatening me. They'll arrest you, and then you'll be sorry. The audacity of her threat left me speechless for a moment. I couldn't believe she would so readily resort to such blatant lies and manipulation. I was acutely aware of the power she wielded, the potential for her false accusations to cause serious harm, especially given the racial dynamics at play. I am a black man, and she was weaponizing stereotypes and prejudices that have plagued our society for far too long. I knew that staying calm was paramount. I took a deep breath and said, Karen, you're being ridiculous. I haven't harassed you, and I certainly haven't threatened you. Calling the police and making false accusations is a serious offense, and I would advise you to reconsider. I tried to inject as much authority and confidence into my voice as possible, hoping to dissuade her from following through with her threat. But it was like talking to a brick wall. Her eyes were locked on me, filled with a mixture of rage and a disturbing sense of self-righteousness. You just wait and see, she spat out, pulling out her phone with a triumphant smirk. The police will be here any minute, and you'll be begging me to drop the charges. You'll be paying for my internet then. She turned her back to me and began dialing, her voice rising in a theatrical tone as she spoke to the operator. I stood there, stunned and increasingly worried. This was escalating far beyond simple, neighborly dispute. I had to figure out what to do next. I considered closing the door and ignoring her, but I knew that wouldn't make her go away. She would likely pound on the door until the police arrived, making the situation even more dramatic. I needed to be prepared to have my side of the story ready. True to her word, it wasn't long before I heard the wail of sirens in the distance. My heart sank. This was really happening. I watched as a police car pulled up to the curb, two officers emerging and walking towards my house. I opened the door and stepped outside, holding my hands up in a gesture of peace. "Officers, I can explain everything," I said, trying to maintain a calm and respectful tone. Karen, who had been pacing back and forth on her lawn, rushed towards them, her voice dripping with false indignation. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. This man has been harassing me for weeks. He's been making threats, and now he's refusing to pay for my internet. I'm afraid for my safety." The performance was Oscar-worthy, complete with crocodile tears and trembling hands. I watched in disbelief as the officers listened intently, their expressions unreadable. One of the officers, a young woman with a stern face, turned to me. "Sir, we received a call about a disturbance and allegations of harassment. Can you tell us what's going on?" I took a deep breath and began to explain the situation, calmly and factually. I recounted Karen's initial demand, her threats, and my refusal to be extorted. I emphasized that I had not harassed her in any way and that her accusations were completely unfounded. As I spoke, Karen interjected with exaggerated gasps and accusations. "He's lying. He's trying to manipulate you. He's a dangerous man." The officer held up her hand, silencing her. "Ma'am, please let him speak." I continued my explanation, making sure to stay composed and avoid any emotional outbursts. I knew that any sign of anger or frustration would only play into Karen's narrative. When I finished, the officer turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, is there any evidence to support your claims of harassment or threats?" Karen stammered, her composure faltering for the first time. "Well, no, not exactly, but he's been giving me dirty looks, and I just know he's been messing with my internet." The officer sighed, clearly growing impatient with Karen's increasingly absurd claims. "Ma'am, dirty looks and suspicions are not grounds for arrest. We need concrete evidence of wrongdoing." Despite the officer's skepticism, the other officer, a burly man with a weary expression, approached me. "Sir, for our safety and to ensure a thorough investigation, we're going to have to temporarily detain you while we sort this out." He pulled out a pair of handcuffs. My heart pounded in my chest. This was exactly what I had feared. The feeling of cold metal clasped around my wrists was surreal, a stark reminder of the power imbalances at play. I had done nothing wrong, yet here I was, being treated like a criminal based solely on the word of a woman with a clear agenda. As they led me towards the police car, I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger and frustration. It wasn't just the injustice of the situation. It was the weight of history, the awareness of the countless black men who had been wrongly accused and unjustly treated by the system. I was placed in the back of the police car, the hard plastic seat digging into my back. I watched as the officers spoke to Karen, their body language suggesting they were growing increasingly doubtful of her story. I could see her gesturing wildly, her voice rising in pitch as she tried to convince them of her version of events. But it was clear that her credibility was rapidly diminishing. After what felt like an eternity, the officers returned to the car. The young female officer opened the door and said, "Mr. James, we've reviewed the situation, and we believe there's no evidence to support Ms. Karen's claims. We apologize for the inconvenience." She removed the handcuffs, the release of the metal a small but significant victory. I rubbed my wrists, trying to ease the lingering discomfort and the deeper sting of the experience. It still didn't change the fact that I was wrongfully detained. I stepped out of the car, feeling a mixture of relief and resentment. The officers had apologized, but the damage was done. I had been humiliated, falsely accused, and subjected to the indignity of being handcuffed in front of my neighbors. I turned to Karen, who was now standing on her porch, her face a mask of fury. "I hope you're happy," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed anger. "You made false accusations that could have had serious consequences for me. This isn't a game, Karen. This is real life." She glared at me, her eyes filled with venom. "You think you've won, don't you? Just you wait. I'll get you for this. Her words were chilling, a clear indication that she wasn't about to let this go. I knew that this was far from over. As the realization dawned on Karen that the police weren't going to take her side, her carefully constructed facade of victimhood began to crumble. Her face contorted into a grotesque mask of rage, and her voice reached a fever pitch. You're all against me. You're all siding with him. I'm the one who's been wronged here. I deserve to have my internet, and he's stealing it from me. She began stomping her feet and flailing her arms, her behavior becoming increasingly erratic. The officers, who had initially tried to reason with her, quickly realized that she was beyond rational discussion. Ma'am, you need to calm down, the female officer said, her voice firm. You're disturbing the peace, and if you don't stop, we're going to have to take you into custody. But Karen was in a full-blown meltdown, her mind seemingly disconnected from reality. She turned towards me, her eyes burning with hatred. This is all your fault, she screamed. You're the reason my life is miserable. Before anyone could react, she lunged at me, her hands outstretched, ready to strike. The officers immediately intervened, grabbing her arms and attempting to restrain her. But Karen was surprisingly strong, fueled by a potent cocktail of anger and entitlement. She struggled against their grip, kicking and screaming, her body thrashing wildly. Get off me. Let me go. I'm going to teach him a lesson. The situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. The officers, struggling to subdue her, were forced to escalate their response. Ma'am, you need to comply. If you don't stop resisting, we're going to have to use force. But Karen was beyond reason, her focus solely on inflicting harm. With no other option, the male officer drew his taser. Taser, 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 he shouted before deploying the weapon. The effect was instantaneous. Karen's body went rigid, her muscles contracting violently as the electricity coursed through her. She let out a primal scream before collapsing to the ground, momentarily incapacitated. The officers quickly moved in, securing her hands behind her back with handcuffs. As she lay on the ground, gasping for breath, the reality of the situation seemed to finally sink in. The scene was surreal. Karen, the self-proclaimed victim, was now being led away in handcuffs, her face streaked with tears and her voice reduced to whimpers. The neighbors, who had gathered to witness the spectacle, watched in stunned silence. The officers helped Karen into the back of the police car, her earlier bravado completely gone. As the car pulled away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of profound sadness. Sadness for Karen, who had allowed her anger and entitlement to consume her. Sadness for myself, for having to endure such a harrowing experience. And sadness for the state of our society, where prejudice and false accusations could so easily escalate into violence and injustice. The officers thanked me for my cooperation and assured me that they would be filing charges against Karen for making false accusations and assault. They also advised me to obtain a restraining order, which I planned to do immediately. As they drove away, I stood on my porch, trying to process what had just happened. The quiet of my neighborhood felt different now, tainted by the ugliness of the encounter. The next few days were a blur of legal consultations, police reports, and media inquiries. The story of Karen's meltdown had quickly spread online, turning her into a viral sensation. While I appreciated the outpouring of support and the condemnation of her behavior, I also felt a deep sense of unease. I didn't want to be defined by this incident, to be known as the guy who was harassed by Karen. I just wanted to go back to my quiet life, to my coding and my coffee and my peaceful walks around the block. But I knew that things would never be quite the same. The experience had shaken me, forcing me to confront the realities of prejudice and the fragility of justice. I resolved to use my experience to advocate for change, to speak out against injustice, and to work towards creating a more equitable and compassionate society. It was a heavy burden to bear, but I knew that I couldn't simply stand by and do nothing. The memory of those handcuffs and the chilling sound of Karen's false accusations will forever serve as a reminder of the work that still needed to be done. And I, Carter James, was ready to do my part.